Hello and welcome to the PMC podcast, where PMC stands for Project Management Conversations. In your project management journey, or even in your PMP preparation, the exam preparation, you would have come across concepts that come from Japan, especially when you study quality management. So these are concepts like Kaizen, that is, continuous improvement, no matter how small. Then there is JIT, or just in time, which is all about having little to no inventory at all. So these concepts also gave birth to a different field of sorts, which is known as lean management. And if you dive deeper into any of these concepts, I guarantee you that you will find a familiar name in your study, and that name is Toyota. So Toyota is actually regarded as the birthplace of these concepts. Now, the reason I'm telling you all this is to set the stage for our guest today, Ghia, who has actually been to Toyota and experienced these concepts firsthand. And not just that, Ghia is a project manager herself. So she was able to relate to these concepts while figuring out how these concepts can be deployed in the field of project management as well. So we will discuss about this with her. Thank you for taking the time out to talk about this with the community, Ghia.
My pleasure. And let's see how much I can help your viewers and your supporters. But I'm happy to
Awesome.
share.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'd like to mention here that she had an article on projectmanagement.com. So that will be linked in the description if you want to go over and check that article out. But we'll be summarizing that, and our discussion will be basically around that only. So, Ghia, we'll talk about the three concepts or practices that you've mentioned in the article as well, that can be helpful for us as project managers. Starting things off with Kaizen. And I touched upon
Mm.
this a bit earlier when I said it's about continuous improvement and all that. But how can us as project managers deploy this powerful concept in our projects?
Right. And I think it relates a little bit to when managers would usually do lessons learned, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, and I got this also from a more senior project manager than I am, we do typically lessons learned at the end of the project. And then this guy tells me, he's like, why don't you do it within the project? I mean, of course, we can do lessons learned across the entire project cycle, life cycle, and all that. And I think that's what one of the things I picked up in that Toyota training was that, projects, especially, they can run for months, for years. If
Yeah.
you wait until the end, you have lost some of the lessons learned already. So one thing that the project managers can start thinking about is like, maybe there's a way to incorporate like lessons learned and with that continuous improvement within the life cycle. So for example, I think I mentioned in the article, we have 5 phases of the project management phases. So you can do it per cycle. During initiation, okay, how can we improve here? What's the feedback? If you do like a retrospective, basically at the end
Mhm.
of first phase, planning, execution, and even execution depending on the complexity of your project, you can even do it in separate work streams. And then you have the rest of the project management phases. So that's one thing to think about. Instead of thinking just, okay, no, fine, we can do it at the end. We don't have a lot of time to think about, continuous improvements within that project and for your other projects later on, for your own
Mhm.
teams and for the other, especially if you're in a PMO, for other project managers as well. Start thinking about these like continuous improvement and lessons learned within the project itself. I think that's one way to do it.
Yeah, so within the timeline of the project itself, I love that answer because usually when we are talking about waterfall projects, we tend to think that, oh, there's a start date and then there's an end date, and we have all these phases
Yeah.
to go through. Lessons learned will come in the end. And that's where, people who prefer agile or are used to working in agile ways of working, they would say, an advantage of agile is that you get these uh, feedback in a shorter cycle. So you do all these retrospective, sprint retrospective, and all that. And this is something that can be deployed even if you're in waterfall projects,
Hybrid.
where
Yeah.
after, yeah. So where you're done with your initiation, you can, go ahead and do a retrospective of sorts, do a lessons learned. When you're done with your planning, you can again do a lessons learned of sort. So yeah, I think that's a great point to begin with. Yeah. All right. So next, I would want to touch upon another point where you've mentioned about standardizing stuff. So I definitely see this the advantage of standardizing activities or processes, but is there more to it? What all can we as project managers standardize?
I think if you take a step back, and standardizing is such a general word, right? And then I think I mentioned in the article, standardized templates, especially if you work in a PMO, of course, that really helps. Standardize, other SOPs, checklists and whatnot. I think if you take a step back, one step before that, if you look at
Mm-hmm.
how Toyota production system looks at the whole flow, before you standardize, because standardization is when you stabilize the
Mm-hmm.
situation. Before that, you need to understand where you are,
Mm-hmm.
right? Understand your current state. So whether, for example, you start a project and then, okay, what is the current state of this project? What is the problem that we're trying to solve, right? Before you even go into the additional complexity of even like standardized templates, you go a step back and said, okay, where are we? Who do we
Mm-hmm.
have here? What are we trying to solve? And then from there, you can start looking about, okay, now we know where we are, we know what we're trying to solve. And then, of course, you map that out within the project management phases. Then you think about, that's the only time you think about standardization, because you think about, and this is like, I have seen this in several PMOs and with other project managers and even in other organizations I've worked for, is that there is a tendency to come in and say that, okay, now we want to standardize everything. Well, what for? What is the purpose? Right? So I mean, that's a key learning as well that I learned in that the 1 week immersive training, is that always come back to the purpose. Why are you standardizing it? Why do you need a standardized project deliverables, for example? Go back and that's what you think about. Remember the why. Remember the purpose of what you're doing things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're touching on the next point that I was going to ask you about, and that was value. And in the recent times, we have seen how the focus of project management as such has shifted from, simply ensuring that the project is delivered within budget, on time, scope, schedule,
Mm.
quality, everything is taken care of. Now the focus has shifted from, okay, all of this is fine, you have to do all of this, but generate some value. All projects must deliver some sort of value to the market, right, to the environment that you're working in.
Yeah.
And you also touched upon something wherein you mentioned that how you can actually look for value while you are working on your project itself, by eliminating waste, by adopting these lean management strategies. Can you tell us more about that, and maybe give an example as well how you can, as a project manager, do something like this?
Right. And if it's as if our jobs aren't hard enough, balancing the project management triangle, and then of course the manager is going to ask, okay, what is the value? What's the ROI? Ah. But I mean, that is the that is the case of this profession, I think, moving forward. But I think one way to float value up is, as according to the Toyota production system, is to eliminate waste. And I relate it a little bit if you've been reading the Elon Musk book that has been going around now. So if you're familiar with the Elon Musk's algorithm, it kind of actually aligns with TPS, and that is like question every requirement. It's a little bit related to that, not exactly, but and you think about it in your project management planning or whatever it is in wherever you are in the project life cycle, is that you try to question, like, why is this important? Do we need this? Do we need this added complexity? Almost. And that's
Mhm.
what like one of the Japanese senses told us in the training. It's like, you guys, you like complicating a lot of things. This is your problem. This is the solution. I mean, don't make it as complicated as that. Because I mean, for example, you are setting up a new warehouse, right? And then you need to secure one of the work streams. Maybe is that you need to secure the supply flow from supplier A to
Mhm.
another node. And then, of course, as simple as, okay, fine, we do a direct model. direct supply flow model. And then, of course, you arrange the infrastructure that is needed for that. And then, of course, you have somebody in the organization. Oh, no, but maybe we need to do this. It has to go through this. No, it has to go through this. No, I mean, no, point A to point B, man. You don't need, it doesn't have to be more complex than that, basically. So try to eliminate the extra nodes, try to eliminate the waste. If it's not adding any value to the process, like for example, that one, like shipping good A to good from point A to point B, it's just as simple as that. And then, okay, fine. If somebody said, okay, maybe we need to redistribute somewhere else. What for? What is the purpose? If there's no purpose, and then we come back to that. I come back to that. Remember the purpose, because if you always come back to the purpose, you will. I think the tendency, and now I try to apply this also to my personal life. That the tendency is that we try to get rid of complexity. If you remember the purpose, right? Then keep things as simple as possible. I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, I think that's a really good answer, because it sort of helps us as project managers also think through some of the processes that we have been following. And as you also sort of touched upon, I think sometimes it just so happens that within our projects, within the process that we follow to deliver projects, we get so comfortable with following a certain system or a certain process that we stop questioning it, right? We stop looking at the value that it is adding. We just do it because this is how it has been done from last 5 years. And, questioning it is a good way to, apply this principle. The other thing is, sometimes when there's someone new who comes into your team, they do have the tendency of asking questions like these. We are doing this step, but what's the value? What is the reason that we're doing it? And that's when we realize that the only answer that we have for them is that that's how it's been done for the last 5 years, so we're doing it. So I mean, I think question everything is actually the takeaway from this. So thank you so much. Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time out, Ghia. I'm pretty sure our community is going to find this short discussion very, very helpful. I'll link to Ghia's LinkedIn as well in the description. If you have any questions around the topic that we discussed, feel free to reach out to her. And thank you so much, Ghia. Any parting comments? How was your experience in Japan? Tell us about Japan.
I'm from the Philippines, so it wasn't my first time to go there. So, I mean, I've loved Japan. I've loved the culture, but being in the Toyota system and the Toyota culture, it is something else. I mean, it is the way that they, inculcate purpose in a lot of the things they do. Like, it's something else. I mean, you see here, like. And of course, if you go into the production lines, and unfortunately, we couldn't take videos and whatnot. I mean, there's a lot of automation. There's a lot of like robot arms that you can see that are helping the workers. But then you ask, like, how do you set that up? I mean, how is that possible? I mean, automation comes last, right? Oh, okay. You automate for the worker to become extra productive, not the other way around. And that I kind of like, I have a feeling that Elon Musk must have been following the Toyota principles, or maybe he's just he's smart that way. But I mean, it's like both of them said, and you automate at the end. You never automate at the beginning, because otherwise, if you automate in the beginning without even knowing if the complexity is needed, then you overcomplicate the process, which is not to be maybe necessary. So it was honestly life-changing, and then there's a lot of practical applications for it. I would, if you ever had an opportunity to do a similar training, I mean, just read Taiichi Ohno's book about the Toyota production system. It's quite good. You can apply it, because TPS is mainly for production. I mean, you go there for production, right? But Toyota has been able to apply the principles of TPS across the entire organization. So now it's like a well-oiled machine, and everybody's trying to follow the same principles.
Awesome.
And I think you can apply that to everyday life, man.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really had a good time speaking to you, Ghia, today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sure. Thank you.